The snow fell in soft spirals around him, dusting the black wool of his coat like powdered regret. Robert stood frozen in the center of the plaza, one gloved hand gripping a pale silver gift bag. Inside was a scarf, hand-woven, soft cashmere, Margaret's favorite color. Couples passed him on every side, laughing, hugging under garlands of warm golden lights. Fireworks thudded in the background, muffled by the curtain of snow. It was New Year's Eve. It should have been a beginning, but for Robert, something had just ended. His phone buzzed in his pocket, once, twice. He didn't check it right away. For a second, he let himself pretend the world had paused, that Margaret was still on her way, that the scarf would still make her smile, that Daniel hadn't known. He pulled the phone out and looked. Margaret had posted a photo, her hand held up in front of the lens, an engagement ring catching the city lights. Daniel stood behind her, arms around her waist, grinning. The caption read, "Started the year as his, ending it as his fiancée." For a long moment, Robert's breath just clouded in the air. He blinked slowly, unsure if he'd read it right. His eyes scanned the image again. Daniel, his best friend. The one who told him to take his time, the one who had helped him write letters, plan gifts, wait for the perfect moment. The one who'd known everything, the one who now had everything. Across the city, Melissa stared at her own screen, mouth slightly open, fingers curled tightly around a chipped coffee mug. Her cheeks were blotched red from crying earlier, though she'd told herself she was over it. She'd loved Daniel for years. Never confessed, never pushed, just supported. Just waited. Just hoped. And now? That post. She picked up her phone again, thumb hovering over Robert's contact. He picked up on the first ring. She didn't say hello. She just said, "What if we got married, before they do?" Silence. Then Robert exhaled, a long, hollow sound like a final breath leaving a tired body. He didn't laugh, didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said. "Okay." Robert met Margaret when they were kids, barefoot in the garden, chasing fireflies while their mothers chatted over tea. She was the first person to ever hand him a flower. He was the first person she ever dared to climb a tree with. It started with scraped knees and pinky promises, and somehow never stopped. As teenagers, they would sneak into the small 24-hour bookstore 2 blocks from Margaret's house. She loved mysteries. He didn't, but he pretended to, because watching her eyes light up as she read aloud from the first page was better than any plot twist. In college, she studied medicine. He studied business. Their paths diverged, but he never stopped orbiting her. Midnight coffees before her exams, quiet walks to help her sleep, congratulating her with sunflowers when she got into residency. No matter how far she ran, he followed with steady steps, and every step of the way, he told Daniel. Daniel had been his roommate in freshman year, tall, charming, naturally charismatic, the kind of guy people gravitated toward. Robert was quieter, thoughtful, but they'd bonded, nights filled with ramen and video games, conversations about girls and dreams and what kind of apartments they'd buy one day. Daniel knew everything. Every time Robert bought Margaret a gift, Daniel helped pick the wrapping. Every time she texted something ambiguous, Daniel gave advice. "Don't rush her," he'd say. "She's the kind of girl you build up to." Robert believed him. He never imagined Daniel might be building something of his own behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Melissa entered their lives without much noise. She joined the firm where Daniel worked, a quiet analyst with a fondness for black coffee and sarcasm. She moved into the flat Robert shared when her landlord sold her old building. For 6 months, she stayed mostly invisible, cordial, neat, helpful. But then Robert noticed the way her eyes lingered on Daniel. She brought him snacks without being asked, laughed too hard at his bad jokes, helped him fix his tie before meetings, always quietly, always from the sidelines. Robert saw it, but he never said anything. Who was he to speak, when he'd been doing the exact same thing to Margaret for nearly a decade? Melissa loved Daniel in the softest, saddest way. Not with declarations or dramatics, but with endless small gestures that went unseen. She never told anyone, not even Robert. But sometimes, when Daniel left the room, she would stare at his empty chair with this look, like she'd memorized every word he never said. And now, the chairs were empty. New Year's Eve had carved them both hollow. Melissa had dressed up that night. She wore red lipstick, rare for her, and a wool coat she'd borrowed from her sister. She waited outside the restaurant Daniel had booked for their office group, thinking maybe he'd ask her to stay for dessert. He never showed. Instead, he posted the photo. Robert saw it on the plaza. Melissa saw it on the curb. Different sides of the city, same story. When she called him and said those words, "What if we got married before they do?" It was absurd, stupid, impulsive. But it made perfect sense. That night, they went to a midnight screening. The theater was half empty, the film forgettable. They sat in silence for the first half, unsure if they were supposed to cry or laugh. At one point, their hands brushed on the shared armrest. Melissa jerked hers away, then muttered, "Sorry." Robert just said, "It's fine." By the end of the movie, they were trading quiet jabs about the plot. She offered him a piece of popcorn without looking. He took it. She didn't pull her hand away this time. There was something about grieving with someone who understood exactly how stupid you felt. The next morning, Robert woke up with a splitting headache and the Vegas sheet. He dreaded that he might have dreamt the whole thing. Then Melissa texted, "Still want to beat them to the altar?" He stared at the screen, then typed, "I'll come talk to your parents, let's make it real." That afternoon, he showed up with pastries and awkward formality. Melissa's mother opened the door with curlers still in her hair. "Oh," she blinked, surprised. "You're Melissa's?" Robert cleared his throat. "Fiancé." Her scream nearly knocked a picture frame off the wall. The next 2 hours were chaos. Melissa kept repeating, "It's not a prank," while her dad Googled auspicious wedding dates. Her little brother asked if Robert had a criminal record. Her mother cried 3 different times, once from shock, once from joy, and once because she couldn't find the porcelain teacups in time for guests. By the time Robert left, they'd already shortlisted 3 venues. He called his own parents next. His mother didn't even let him finish the sentence before shrieking, "You're getting married? To Melissa? Oh, thank God, it's about time you got serious." "But we've only been..." "Don't jinx it," she snapped. "Your aunt's friend's daughter is a bridal designer. I'll call her now." Within 12 hours, both families were moving faster than Robert and Melissa could blink. They were no longer background characters in someone else's love story. They were the ones with a date. The engagement photos were bad enough, but it was the captions that really burned. Margaret's first post had been cryptic, just a hand and a diamond ring, a caption about new beginnings. Robert had stared at it in silence, his coffee going cold, until Melissa walked into the room holding her tablet. "They've changed their bios," she said, flipping it toward him. Margaret, engaged to my better half. Daniel, taken, forever starts now. A week later, the vacation posts began. Beaches, cocktails, matching sunglasses, Margaret in a bikini, Daniel holding her hand. Each photo chipped away at something in Robert's chest, leaving behind a hollow clatter. He didn't say anything, just closed the app, tucked his phone away, and got back to writing guest names on their wedding invitations. Melissa tried to keep her voice neutral when she spoke, but he could hear it, the cracks in her throat, the breath she always took before reading another caption out loud. She said she wasn't hurt, she said she didn't care, but she looked at the crystal-beaded wedding gown for a long time that afternoon, holding the delicate lace between her fingers. "I think this one's prettier," she said softly. Robert looked up. "The lace?" She nodded, but her eyes were distant. He remembered what she'd once told him, how Daniel had said lace looked outdated, said it reminded him of curtains. "Melissa." She turned. "Pick what you want, not what he hated." For a second, she didn't respond, then her hand curled tighter around the lace. "Good," she muttered, "because I hate crystal." Later that week, Robert left the boutique to run an errand, something simple, just a quick stop at a jeweler to adjust his cufflink clasp, but fate never worked cleanly. As he stepped onto the snowy sidewalk, a voice behind him called out, "Robert!" He turned, and there he was. Daniel in a designer coat and leather gloves, standing lié. Like nothing had changed, he held a shopping bag and a bright grin, as if they were still roommates, still boys with jokes and loyalty and beer in the fridge. "Wow," Daniel said, nodding toward the store. "Didn't think you'd still be buying from here. What is it? Ring for Margaret? Or returning one?" Robert stared at him, then said evenly, "It's not for her, I'm marrying Melissa." Daniel's smirk faltered, just for a second. It was quick, but not quick enough. "Seriously?" he said, voice laced with disbelief. "You and Melissa? Since when?" "Since the night you posted that photo." Daniel's eyes narrowed. So it's revenge. Robert tilted his head. And what would that make yours? Before Daniel could answer, a voice cut in from behind them. There you are, Margaret said. She appeared like she always did, gliding into scenes uninvited, acting like the world owed her a reaction. She looked Robert up and down, then spotted the bag in his hand. Still playing dress-up? He didn't move. Margaret's gaze shifted to Melissa, who was just stepping out of the boutique doors. She was in casual clothes today, gray knit sweater, her hair in a low bun. No makeup, no performance. Margaret's tone turned syrupy. Melissa, come on, you're not seriously upset, are you? It wasn't that deep. I didn't even know you liked Daniel like that. I mean, it's not like he ever noticed. Melissa didn't flinch. She stepped forward, dropped her voice, and said, We're getting married before you. Margaret blinked. Excuse me? Robert stepped to Melissa's side. We've already booked the venue. Invitations go out next week. Daniel looked between them, his brows drawn. Wait, you're serious? Melissa met his gaze for the first time. Very. Margaret scoffed. You're being ridiculous. No, Robert said. We're being done. The silence that followed was brittle. Daniel shifted on his feet, unsure if he should defend himself or disappear. Margaret opened her mouth again, then closed it. She hadn't expected this, not from him, not from them. Congratulations, she said finally, though the word sounded sour. I hope it's not just a stunt. It's not, Melissa replied. But you're welcome to come see it for yourself. Front row. Margaret laughed, too loudly. Sure, can't wait. She turned and walked off. Daniel lingered, staring at them as if he couldn't quite believe the lines had been drawn. Guess I'll see you around, he said. Robert said nothing. Melissa's hand brushed his. They walked away, snow crunching beneath their boots. Inside the boutique, the attendant greeted them warmly. The custom dress came in early. Would you like to try it now? Melissa nodded. Yeah, let's do it. Robert waited on the couch, fingers drumming against his knee. Through the curtain, he could hear the rustle of fabric, the zip of the back, the quiet intake of breath. Then she stepped out. He stood. The dress shimmered faintly under the lights. Not lace, not crystal, just silk, clean and perfect, with a small starburst pattern across the waist. Melissa smiled, uncertain. What do you think? She asked. He looked at her, really looked, past the past, past the pain. You don't look like someone playing dress-up, he said. She smiled wider. I look like someone getting married. Robert found himself watching the snow fall again from the window of the bridal boutique's waiting area, but this time, his gaze wasn't fixed on the outside, it was turned inward. Memory was a cruel, selective thing. He remembered the time he surprised Margaret with a reservation at a rooftop restaurant she'd once mentioned in passing. She had shown up 30 minutes late, eyes scrolling through her phone, and barely touched her food. This place is too flashy, she had said, grimacing. Next time, let's go somewhere more low-key. The next time, he chose a quiet little ramen bar. She wrinkled her nose. This feels cheap, we're not students anymore. He tried bringing her sunflowers once, her favorite, or so she said. She didn't even unwrap them. They die so fast, she'd said flatly, sliding them into the trash bin after 2 days. She never smiled for his selfies, never let him hold her hand in public. Her affection was rationed, always conditional. She gave him the kind of love that felt like chasing approval on a tightrope. And he had called it devotion. Melissa, on the other hand, he couldn't remember the exact moment things began to shift. It wasn't sudden. It was in the way she laughed at his worst puns. How she ordered extra pickles because he hated them and always gave him hers. How she offered to iron his shirt when she noticed the crease he missed, not to impress him, but because she knew he'd stress about it. When she joked, it wasn't to cover hurt, it was to keep things light, even when she herself was sinking. He didn't know how he missed it before. Melissa stepped out from the changing room again, the fourth dress that day swishing softly as she moved. This one was different, simpler, sleeveless, with soft ivory tulle that fluttered just slightly with each breath. Okay, she said, brushing a curl behind her ear, be honest, do I look good, or like someone's trying too hard? He got up, walked over. Her back was still bare. Turn around, he said. She did, and he reached for the zipper, slowly pulling it up, his fingers brushing the warm line of her spine. When she turned to face him again, she was biting her lip. Well? He met her eyes, then said quietly, honestly, not good enough. Her expression faltered. You deserve stunning. The way her eyes widened at that, like she hadn't expected it, like no one had ever told her that, made his chest tighten. She blinked quickly, then looked away. You're just saying that. I never said that to Margaret, he murmured. Not once. There was a pause. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Later that night, Robert was at his apartment, sorting through old messages to delete. That's when Margaret's name flashed on the screen. The message was long, longer than anything she'd ever sent when they were together. Robert. I just want to say I didn't mean to hurt you. I liked Daniel for a long time, but I didn't know how to tell you. You were always sweet and stable, and I guess a part of me didn't want to disappoint you. Please don't take it out on him. He didn't steal me, he just was there. I hope you find your happiness. Please don't hate us. He stared at the blinking cursor. Melissa's message came through a minute later. Look what I just got. A screenshot from Daniel. Hey, I know it's been weird, but thank you for everything, for always being kind to me, even when I didn't notice. I hope you find someone who sees what I never did. You're amazing, Mel, always were. Robert sent back a single text. Twins, even in rejection. Melissa. Gross, did they coordinate these? Robert. Copy-paste emotional damage. Melissa. Can't believe I once liked a guy who used semicolons in apology texts. Robert. At least yours didn't say, hope you find peace. I feel like I just got dumped from a Satas wellness retreat. She replied with an emoji, the one with a straight face and a single sweat drop. He smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it didn't hurt alone. Melissa came over later with fried chicken and 2 cheap beers. They ate on the couch in silence for a while, watching reruns of a cooking show. She had her feet tucked under her and her hair tied up in a messy bun that had lost the messy part and just looked like freedom. I used to think, she said quietly, that maybe if I just kept showing up, Daniel would eventually, I don't know, look back and realize I'd been there the whole time. Robert didn't interrupt. But I don't want to be chosen out of guilt or comfort. I want someone who picks me on purpose. He glanced over. Me too. She raised her beer. To being on purpose then. He clinked his bottle against hers. And for the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel so heavy. It was close to midnight when the doorbell rang, long, drawn out, and desperate. Robert stirred from the couch, still half asleep, a heating pad pressed to his lower back and a half-eaten tub of ice cream melting on the coffee table. He'd spent the whole evening replying to venue emails and watching Melissa argue with her cousin over dress fabric on speakerphone. When the bell rang again, this time more erratic, he dragged himself up with a sigh. He opened the door, expecting a neighbor, a delivery mix-up, or even Melissa with one of her, "You won't believe what I just saw," expressions. But instead, he found Margaret. Mascara smudged, coat slipping from one shoulder, breath sweetened with liquor and something sour beneath it. She looked like a ghost, familiar and wrecked. "Robert," she said, her voice cracking like glass underfoot. He didn't answer, just held the door with one hand, body blocking her from stepping inside. "You don't love her," Margaret continued, her eyes already filling. "You love me, you always did, you don't have to go through with it, you don't have to pretend." His grip on the door stiffened. "Margaret," he said quietly, "go home." She stepped closer, hand reaching for his chest, trembling. "You don't understand. I've tried to love Daniel. I tried so hard, but he's not you. He doesn't see me." Robert didn't flinch. She kept going. "You used to look at me like I was everything. Remember the bookstore, the lanterns on the bridge? You bought me soup when I had the flu. No one's ever done that. I thought I didn't need it, but I do. I need you." She choked on a sob, her voice wavered into a breathless whisper. "I still love you." And that's when he felt it, that cold churn in his stomach, that sharp twist in his gut. He doubled over and, without a word, turned his head to the side and threw up on the doorstep. Loud, violent. Final. Margaret gasped, stumbling back as the retching echoed in the hallway. "What the?" Footsteps came from behind. Melissa. She was holding a small bag of groceries, clearly just returned from the convenience store down the block. She took in the scene, the collapsed X, the mess on the concrete, Robert wiping his mouth with his sleeve. Her eyes sparkled. "Wow," she said flatly. "Didn't realize we were hosting open mic night for emotional trauma." Margaret turned toward her, shocked. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "You done?" Margaret opened her mouth again, voice soft, trembling. "I didn't know he meant so much to me until I saw him with someone else. I panicked." Robert staggered upright, wiping his mouth again. "And you came here to, what? Fix it with a speech?" "I came to tell you I was wrong." "Well," Melissa said, stepping forward, "consider it told, now leave." Robert said nothing as Melissa slammed the door shut. In the silence that followed, the two of them stood in the foyer. Robert leaned his forehead against the doorframe, eyes closed, breath shaky. Melissa slipped past him into the kitchen and came back with a damp cloth and a bottle of water. He sat at the edge of the couch, and she knelt in front of him, cleaning the corner of his mouth like it was the most normal thing in the world. He let her, said nothing for a while, then finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he muttered, "I think I stayed in love with Margaret for too long because I thought I owed her that, like, if I let go, it would make everything I did meaningless, all the effort, the waiting." Melissa didn't speak. "But now," he continued, "now I don't owe her anything. I don't owe anyone anything." He looked at her, really looked. Melissa sat back on her heels, her eyes were calm, warm. "Then maybe," she whispered, "it's time we gave something to ourselves." The room was quiet, lit only by the glow of a single floor lamp. The heating pad buzzed softly behind them. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering leaves across the empty street. Robert reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He didn't need grand speeches, didn't need declarations. All he needed was that, her hand in his, her eyes steady, her presence real. Melissa leaned her head against his shoulder and sighed. "Well, now I know what happens when you see your ex." "What?" "You vomit like you just watched a horror film." He groaned. "Don't remind me." She chuckled. "No, seriously, it was impressive. You should win an Oscar for that one." He rolled his eyes. "It wasn't planned. She caught me off guard." "Well," Melissa smirked, "I call that poetic justice. You upchuck years of emotional constipation in one go." Robert laughed, genuinely this time. The tension in his shoulders eased just a bit. They sat like that for a while, no past, no performance, just two people finally learning how to breathe around each other. The boutique had been closed to the public for the day, a private preview event for a new shipment of imported designer gowns. Melissa had been invited after their consultant, accidentally, forwarded her a client-only link. Robert suspected his mother might have had something to do with that. A gentle waltz hummed from the overhead speakers, bouncing off crystal chandeliers and floor-length mirrors. The room smelled faintly of lavender and silk polish. Assistants in black uniforms flitted around, adjusting hangers, fluffing fabric, whispering instructions. Robert sat in one of the velvet lounge chairs by the fitting rooms, one leg crossed over the other, sipping espresso from a tiny porcelain cup that felt wildly out of place in his large hands. He wasn't a fashion guy. But when Melissa stepped out in that gown, time stalled. The dress shimmered like starlight, thousands of fine sequins cascading down in waves, hugging her shape before flaring slightly at the knees. The neckline dipped in just enough to make a statement, but still looked like something a queen would wear. Her hair was pinned loosely, curls falling just behind her ear. No makeup, no posing. She looked like the woman people write songs about and then never get over. Melissa caught him staring. "Too much?" Robert didn't answer immediately. She laughed nervously, smoothing the front of the gown. "I knew it, it's overkill." He stood, slowly, walked toward her. "It's perfect." She blinked. "You look like the beginning of something I never want to end." And then, like a punchline to a joke the universe wouldn't stop telling, the boutique door chimed. Margaret walked in first, her heels echoing sharply against the tile. Daniel followed behind her, looking less smug than usual, but just as calculated. They weren't supposed to be there. This wasn't their appointment. Margaret's eyes landed on Melissa, and widened, just for a split second, before the sneer settled in. "You're not really marrying her, are you?" she asked Robert, tone light as if mocking an old friend's prank. Robert didn't hesitate. He stepped closer to Melissa and wrapped his arm around her waist, his voice even and sharp. "Why not? If you can move on overnight, so can I." Margaret's lips twitched. She turned to Daniel, who still hadn't spoken. The air thickened. Daniel finally broke the silence. "So that's it, huh? This whole thing was just about getting even. Revenge. You don't actually love her." Robert didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just looked him in the eye and said, "You think everyone wants what you have, but the truth is, your ego's the only thing anyone's ever been in love with." Daniel's expression darkened. "Melissa doesn't love you like she loved me." Melissa straightened. She was quiet, still holding Robert's hand. Her fingers didn't flinch. Robert looked at Daniel with calm detachment. "No. She loves herself now. That's enough." The silence that followed was brutal. Even the boutique staff paused, frozen in the tension. The assistant by the dressing curtain lowered her clipboard. Margaret's face had paled. Her eyes flicked to Melissa, searching for cracks in her composure, an insecure glance, a downcast eye, but Melissa just adjusted her veil and smiled faintly. "Funny," Melissa said. "You thought we were weak because we loved you, but love didn't break us, you did." Daniel scoffed. "You think you're better off with him?" "No," Melissa said, tilting her chin. "I know I am." Robert turned to the nearest attendant. "We'll take the dress." The girl hesitated, then nodded and scurried to process the payment. "Wait," Margaret snapped, stepping forward. "You're seriously going through with this? With her?" Robert looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, he saw her for what she was, not the dream version he'd carried around like a weight, but the real one, selfish, image-obsessed, cruel beneath the softness. "Yes," he said, "Melissa laughs at my jokes, even the bad ones. She never made me feel like I was one mistake away from losing her, and she never treated love like a prize to be earned." Margaret flushed. "I was never cruel." "You were dismissive," he said, "which is worse, because I spent years trying to be someone worthy of your attention, and you spent years pretending not to notice." Margaret didn't respond. Robert took the dress bag from the attendant and draped it gently over Melissa's shoulder. Daniel made a final attempt. "You're throwing away decades of friendship over a dress and a rebound." Robert looked at him. "No, I'm just done pretending betrayal is something I should forgive because it came with a smile." He offered Melissa his arm. "Shall we?" Melissa linked her hand through his elbow, head held high, and they walked toward the exit. Before they stepped through the boutique doors, Melissa turned one last time. "By the way," she said, voice smooth, "this wasn't a rebound, it was a rescue." Margaret's mouth parted, but nothing came out. Daniel just looked tired. Robert pushed open the door, letting the winter air rush in. Outside, the snow had started falling again, soft, steady, cleansing. Melissa turned her face up toward the sky. Robert leaned in. "You ready?" She smiled. "I was born ready." The morning of the wedding, Robert stared at his phone screen like it was the only thread tethering him to reality. Melissa's face filled the display, still in her bridal prep room, curlers in, foundation half done, brows furrowed. "Still there?" she asked, sipping from a paper cup of tea. He nodded. "Haven't moved. You look tense." "I'm about to get married." She smirked. "You're not having second thoughts, are you?" He held up 3 fingers. "Swear on my worst dad jokes." "That's not comforting." "Melissa," he said seriously, "I'm terrified." There was a pause. "Me too," she admitted. "What if this isn't revenge anymore? What if it's just us?" "Then we're luckier than we thought." Their call stayed open the entire ride to the venue. Even while getting dressed, he propped the phone up on the sink counter as he adjusted his tie. Melissa had her maid of honor hold the phone during makeup. Neither of them wanted to hang up, just in case. But neither of them did. When the doors to the ceremony opened, Melissa walked down the aisle with a steady smile, bouquet in hand, eyes locked on his. Robert's heart slammed against his chest, not with nerves, but with the dizzying calm of certainty. He knew. This wasn't a performance, this wasn't a race. It was a beginning. They said their vows beneath a canopy of soft white orchids, Both stammered a little, both laughed through parts. Their parents cried. His mom almost passed out when he actually remembered the ring. The photos, taken beneath golden afternoon light, spread like wildfire across social media. Office romance ends in elegant winter wedding. Best friend's ex finds forever in viral twist. Melissa Roberts' vows are the softest mic drop of the year. The internet dubbed them revenge soulmates. Margaret and Daniel stayed quiet for days. Then the cracks began to show. A blogger exposed photos of Daniel with a co-worker, hand on her lower back, too late at night. Margaret denied it. Daniel claimed it was a misunderstanding, but then Margaret was spotted at a resort with an ex-classmate, booking one room, not two. Their PR team scrambled, family reputations were dragged into the mess. Daniel's father gave a public statement asking the media for grace and space. Margaret's parents deactivated their socials. Robert didn't comment. Melissa just turned off notifications. They had other things to do. One evening, a few weeks after the wedding, Robert came home to the smell of soy sauce chicken warming the kitchen like a memory. The light over the stove cast a glow across Melissa's back, her apron tied sloppily, hair in a braid, humming something soft under her breath. He walked in quietly and slipped his arms around her waist from behind. She startled, then relaxed against him. He leaned his chin on her shoulder. "Didn't think you'd be back so early," she said. "Had to come home to the important stuff." She flipped the chicken gently. "Flattery won't get you more thighs." He murmured against her ear. "Loyalty brings love. Patience keeps it. Conscience makes it last." She paused, turned slightly, squinting at him. "Wait. Did you cheat on me?" "What? No!" Melissa held up the knife dramatically. "Robert, this is soy sauce chicken. You don't get to ruin soy sauce chicken." He grinned. "You're insane." She set the knife down and smiled. "Little bit." He kissed her cheek, slow and certain. She tapped her lips once, eyes playful. "They want one too." He blinked. "Who?" She pointed at the fridge magnets. "The audience." With a laugh, he swept her into his arms and kissed her again, this time fully. Then kisses all around. The chicken simmered. The world outside spun, but inside this small kitchen, their story had finally settled.